But now we realize there was one, reads a lot like Genesis when you read it backwards. Plagiarism, pure and simple. They do it all the time. But then now they're pimping off the back of medical science and doing extraordinary moments in surgery, surgical intervention, to do the near-death experience racket. This is a familiar thing. All these things will yield to properly controlled scientific investigation. But the things that we know already are miraculous enough.
Science is not infallible either.
No.
My husband, when he started medical school, the first day they said, his professor stood in front of him and he said, I just want you to know that everything you learn these 4 years, by the time you finish your practice, half of it will be proven untrue. The problem is you just don't know which half.
Shmuley. Can I just, okay, you want to put a question there? Yeah, no, it's worth addressing some of the points that Christopher made. You know, many here, I'm sure, are familiar with the story. Socrates was told by the oracle at Delphi that he was the wisest man in Greece. And when he heard it, he chuckled and he said, if that is so, it is because I am the only one who knows what he doesn't know. And I think there used to be a certain humility to scientific investigation where theories were postulated to explain evidence, to explain facts. That is the scientific method, and we all know that it works. It works in medicine, it works with your iPhone, it works with all your appliances, and there's great truth to science. There's an arrogance that's developing in science that I think should be a little bit worrisome. Because what I said in that debate with Dawkins is, Maimonides, considered the greatest Jewish thinker of all time, who was strongly influenced by Aristotle, and he was a great doctor, of course, court physician to Sultan Salah al-Din, Saladin. He said, Kabbalah emes mimisha omru, you must embrace the truth regardless of its source. And Judaism, I can't speak for other religions, but Judaism is a religion based on this search for truth. Now, Lisa just said that science does change its theories, and sometimes with great frequency. When Maimonides was alive, the most important scientific theory of the time was the Aristotelian theory of the eternity of matter. It sort of survived into modern science in the solid state theory. There was no belief that matter actually came into existence. And because of that, many Jews of the time wanted to reinterpret the book of Genesis to accommodate this eternity of matter. Maimonides said, I would do it if the facts could be proven by some infallible means to be true, but I believe the theory is flawed, and he subjected it to a scientific refutation in his great philosophical treatise, written 900 years ago, The Guide to the Perplexed. Of course, later, and now Christopher is saying that religion is plagiarizing science, we came up with the Big Bang Theory after the solid state theory, where all of existence, the entire universe, came into existence in an instant. Now, is that the story of Genesis? I don't know. There are similarities. It's impressive that there are some similarities. I'm sure there are many discrepancies as well. But to say that we plagiarized it, come on. The entire ancient world believed in the eternity of matter. Other religions advocated the 7 days and 7 nights of Krishna, that life was cyclical. Even, that famous book, The Gifts of the Jews, points out that the one thing that the Jews definitely gave the world that could not have been plagiarized because it was so original was the idea of linear history, as opposed to cyclical history. And of course, our calendar now is based entirely on linear history. There are many gifts of religion. To deny them all, I think, is to deny the facts. Cardinal Walter Casper was very controversial today. I haven't even seen the whole story, but he said, he's in charge of the Catholic Church's interfaith relations. He said that Britain was a third world country. He should not offend other nations, and he was rightly left off the Pope's trip as a result. But I had a meeting with Cardinal Casper about 4 months ago at the Vatican. He seemed to me a man of humility and a man of openness, very soft-spoken.
Wonder how he got to be a cardinal.
I'm sorry?
I wonder how he got to be a cardinal with all those qualities.
Oh, he and the Pope grew up in Germany together. I don't know. But he gave us a lot of time. But he said that Britain is beginning to show evidence of a certain virulent kind of atheism. It's funny because I had a front row seat to this development. I started doing, and in my arrogance, I might even legitimately claim to be one of the sources of origin for this modern sequence of publishing events about great books on atheism. And I'll tell you why. Because Richard Dawkins, and he will verify this story, was known to sort of not believe in God. He wasn't very outspoken against religion. And I asked him, to do a debate on science versus religion. And we did this massive debate, and then we started doing them every single year. I think we had 6 in total. I moderated 4 or 5, participated in 2. The dialogue was very friendly back then. It was very respectful. It didn't mean that Dawkins believed anything about religion. He didn't. But he didn't think that religious people were bad people. And he didn't think that religion had nothing to contribute. That's what we're hearing now, that it has nothing to contribute. And that everything, as Christopher just said, is going to one day be open to scientific rational investigation. Really? Does anyone here really believe that? Do you think we will ever truly understand the infinity of the cosmos? We might. But right now, there's no reason to believe we ever will. It's too vast. Humans are mortal. And that's an act of faith. That is an act of pure faith. To say that we will one day understand, Christopher Hitchens has just said he has faith without any evidence that this will one day happen. On the contrary, the more we discover is the infinitesimal nature of man, and science is actually showing us that. And there's so many mysteries, and they may one day unravel and reveal our secrets to the human mind. They may not. Anyone here who is absolutely atheistic, agnostic, is certain there is no God. You still have many beliefs. You probably believe that the world is going to get better. Why are we all so upset that America is declining? 64% of people in the CBS poll just said that America is in serious decline. Why are you upset? Historical inevitability predicted this. It is inevitable. America will fall, period. You can elect the best president. You can have the best Congress. You can root out all political corruption, but history shows, as Oxford's greatest historian, who unfortunately was a little bit anti-Semitic, Arnold Toynbee, in the study of history, America will fall, as every civilization beforehand. So why are we doing all this? Why do we think it's not true, it's not inevitable? And there's no evidence to support any belief that it won't. None. All the evidence says we are doomed. It's happened before. It's called cyclical history, and there's no way out. No matter how much you want to identify, read all of Gibbon about how Rome fell, it's still inevitable because human beings are corrupt. And yet we still believe that we can perfect. That's a belief. No evidence whatsoever. In that sense, I think that, and let me conclude by saying, in that sense, I think that the religious ideas of linear history, our ability to make tomorrow better than today and give our children better lives than we ourselves had, that is a religious belief, and it doesn't make a difference if you don't believe in God, because again, it's unsupported by fact. If we were to take a scientific determinist view of life, it's quite gloomy and it's quite dark. The reason why I respect Christopher Hitchens, amidst some of our very serious disagreements, and let me conclude by saying, based on everything that I just said, is that he's different to all the other atheists. Honestly, I've discovered this in debating them. You see, he has a genuine love for humanity. Richard Dawkins will go up and say, I'm going to arrest the Pope because the Pope allowed the molesting of children, or as Christopher would call it, raping of children. I think you've used that in many of your essays.
Rape and torture.
Rape and torture. Okay, fair enough. Richard Dawkins suddenly loves children. He even wrote in his book that religious parents, I think, should be prosecuted or not prosecuted. They should be stopped from giving their children religious education, etc. He suddenly cares about kids. Really? What's he done for kids? You mean only when the Pope comes to Britain he remembers there's kids? But in other words, he doesn't love children, in my opinion. He probably just hates religion. But Christopher Hitchens is very different. He has shown throughout his life an absolute dedication to the human family. He has been one of the most eloquent voices for human rights that there is. That's why I honor him. Because at the end of the day, I don't care what a person believes, I care what they do. And in this sense, this is a great debate, but it doesn't really matter. Because action is everything. Is Barack Obama Muslim? He says he's a Christian, I believe him. But what if he were? Who cares? I don't care if he believes in the Starship Enterprise and speaks Klingon. As long as he's a good president, if he has values that I can respect, if he stopped the genocide in the Sudan, if he spoke out strongly against a woman who may be stoned to death in Iran, I don't care if he believes in the rafters of the ceiling. What does that bother me? I care what people do. In that sense, I don't care what Christopher Hitchens believes or doesn't believe. He's a champion of human rights, and we need more of them. The essays of his that I've read, there is no more eloquent assailer of tyrants and dictators than Hitchens. And you're right about the Catholic Church or at least Pope Pius the 12th, Eugenio Pacelli, and Hitler, of course. That was a bugaboo in our last debate, so let me concede the point, absolutely. Pius XII, Eugenio Pacelli, I believe, and I'm sorry to say this to all my Catholic brothers and sisters, because they were phenomenal. Pope John XXIII was one of the greatest men of the 20th century, I believe. But Eugenio Pacelli, I believe, was a criminal who never spoke out against the Holocaust even once, who allowed masses to be said when Hitler died, and indeed he signed the first concordat with the Nazi Third Reich. But his predecessor, Pope Pius XI, gave an encyclical against Hitler in 1937 that was read through all the churches. I think it was called Mitbrenner, I don't speak German. Someone help me, Mitbrenner Storge, with burning...
Mitbrenner des Sorge.
Sorry?
Mitbrenner des Sorge, with mounting anxiety.
With mounting anxiety. And then he, of course, wrote the encyclical that was going to publish in 1939 against the discrimination against Jews, which, when he died, in mid-1939 was quashed by Pius XII. That's the reason why when I met the Pope, Benedict, I was there as part of a conference as Jewish leaders who wanted to find good in Pius XII, and I had to explain to Cardinal Casper and everyone else that I met that I couldn't do that. You're absolutely right about that. Okay, religion has a lot to apologize for, and we should. We absolutely should.
So God removed his vicar of Christ on earth in the 1930s from an anti-Nazi one to a pro-Nazi one, just in time for the advent of the third. That's what you have to believe if you're a Catholic. This is the appointed vicar of Christ on earth. The power holds the keys of Peter and the apostolic succession. There was one who was very dubious about the Nazis. He gets whacked out just in time for one who's soft on Nazism to be the holder of the keys. Believe this or believe it not, but it's a point of faith. Okay, so why is tonight different from other nights? Because it turns out you have a furry, child-friendly atheist in your midst.
On behalf of the Board of Trustees of This World, the Values Network, I would like to offer our sincere appreciation to visiting adjunct professor Christopher Hitchens and America's best-known rabbi, Rabbi Shmuley Boteach.
Bravo.
And our most courageous moderator, Lisa Oz, for treating us to a fascinating and intriguing dialogue this evening. Also, we want to thank all...
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here, and please forgive me. I may need to run in the midst of your answers to pick up a child, if you know. But I'll move quickly. It's actually one for each of you. Christopher, it seems to me that these positions are somewhat dated, or the positioning is somewhat dated, in the sense that many Americans, in particular, tend to pick and choose from different faith traditions, or really have not much patience with religious orthodoxy, but pick and choose from different traditions to create an amalgam of a spiritual life. And do you have an objection to a life spent in good works, in which someone may be inspired by aspects of Hinduism or Buddhism or Judaism without holding any fealty to religious faith, if their felt perception is that a spiritual reality motivates them? And then I have one for you quickly. Okay. Well, I'll ask him quickly, and then I may need to scamper mid-answer. But the one for you is, I'm perfectly prepared to believe that Jews are great, but if we're so great, why don't we proselytize?
Why do we? Why don't we?
Why don't we proselytize?
Oh. Okay.
All right, well, Thomas Jefferson at one point writes to his nephew, I think it's Peter Carr, saying, there will be a time when every young American of intelligence will be Unitarian. Seems stupid now. Unitarians are still around. They produce the Jefferson Bible, which is the well-snipped version that takes out the supernatural, leaves you a very short book, and also snips out the immoral, which makes it even more prunable. And they believe, as you know, in one God maximum. But actually, Jefferson's prediction wasn't that far off. Among students I know, and from the impression I get of the middle-class press and media, the general tendency is to a kind of cafeteria, a la carte religion, selected from some kinds of Eastern cult sometimes, from a few of the tenderer bits of the Beatitudes, from some of my